Right, next up from the Futurist X Summit earlier this week, here's a conversation with an AI futurist. As I've said, there were many futurists at the event, something like, I think, 30 of the world's top 50 recognized futurists. This is a man who says he's here to shake things up and to shift mindsets. Mira Business FM, we are at the Futurists X Summit. You may see Exponential, you may see Voices of the Future. Voices of the Future is a book. It's written by Tariq Qureishy, who is this gentleman here. Tariq, lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
Very nice to get 5 minutes with you. We've known each other a few years, not well, but we're kind of catching up today. Tell me first of all about Exponential and about Voices of the Future. Tell me about yourself.
In the last 15, 20 years, my life has meandered as the publisher and the CEO of the Times, Sunday Times. I brought it here in 2007. A few years later, I joined Bloomberg Media. I was heading the media side of it. And then I left them in 2016. And when I left there, I sort of said, enough of this nonsense of building other people's brands. Why don't I do that myself? That's the official story. Perhaps it was early midlife crisis, but that's another story. I have to be an entrepreneur. I have to go do my own thing. And I started a podcast platform called Mad Talks. Mad stands to make a difference. I'm all about making a difference in life, in business, and in the future. And I sort of evolved, and I've always been innovative. But as a futurist, it was a new discovery. And one of the things I talk about a lot is reinvention. Right. We cannot just incrementally get into the future because the world is exponential and we think in a linear fashion. So we need to find ways to transform, ideally reinvent, and perhaps even metamorphosis from a caterpillar to a butterfly. And to me, the thinking behind that was to set up a company which represents who I am as a person. I love to talk. I love to meet people like yourselves and others. So the podcast platform was my starting point. Too early in the game. Typical innovation nonsense. First to market is terrible. You as a startup organization would understand that. So I struggled a wee bit to create a financial business model. Right. And then I ended up launching Exponential in 2018. And that is really a future foresight, advisory, transformation platform and ecosystem. And we have 3 things in there. Advisory and consulting is one. And learning, culture, and development is the other, because we can transform and do any kind of technology. But if we don't shift the culture and get people aligned and trained within that, it's going to fail.
It's interesting you say that, because I always think one of the biggest hurdles that you find in any business, any walk of life, in any illness, generally tends to be acceptance.
Yes.
And rates of acceptance are stratospherically low in most cases. Things take time to catch on. You said yourself you were very early in the podcast age. 2016 was, that was a nascent time.
Indeed. Everybody wanted to go into Snapchat, and everything has to be short, and everything has to be in little bite size. And I'm saying, no, we need context, we need depth, we need understanding, we need flavor. And I was too early. And now podcast business has absolutely exploded. I'm still in it, because Voices of the Future was also a podcast platform. Okay. And when I started writing the book, it was really bloody difficult. And so I said, what do I do better than writing? It's talking. So
you do that very well.
You're very kind. So what I did was 110 podcasts of some of the greatest scientists, futurists, environmentalists, philosophers, all of these people, and the collection of stories. And my idea was to bring in all of these divergent thoughts in terms of the future, coalesce them, we'll work with them there, and then the divergence starts in terms of how the future is going to shape. And I am a very optimistic person. I want a utopian future, and a lot of people have been discussing a dystopian future. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to find a way to get to that utopia. Not easy, and I think things are getting much worse before they will get better.
Well, let's hope so. This is the Futurists X Summit. For anybody watching this, listening to this, thinking, what does a futurist do day to day? What does a futurist do day to day?
I reinvented myself as a futurist in 2016 when I relaunched my whole life out of corporate life and out of Dow Jones, Wall Street Journal, The Times. And people thought, what the hell is this? On LinkedIn, 9 years ago, I was probably the only futurist around. Today, every second person is a futurist because they've got the jargon, they've got the terminology, but they haven't got the depth and the context, and I think that's where the things are. A futurist really is a person who can connect the dots of life, of knowledge, of information, and then project it into the future. And I actually live in the future 10 years from now, and I work back from there. Okay. So the whole idea of a futurist is, I am today living in the year 2030, not 2025. That's the only way I can think when I walk into a bank, when I walk into a board, and I'm just saying, guys, 2030 is not that far away. 80% of the jobs in 2030 do not exist today. So how the hell do you hire for people for jobs that don't yet exist, and for attributes and skills you don't yet know? So you need to start working on that, planning on that today rather than in the future. Because by the time the future happens, it actually accelerates and goes straight past you. You need to anticipate that. One of my wonderful partners, she's here, Dr. Rabir Haddad, she's a legal futurist. So she actually writes legislation, regulation, compliance, and policy 3 years, 5 years from ahead. So we go and talk to the regulator here in Abu Dhabi, and she has written all of the work for fintech, for example. So when AI arrives, when fintech arrives, they can catch the ball. So we need to anticipate that. So a futurist works, looking at the future. The other thing is living in the future, because you need to start anticipating and visualizing that in your head, and only then the adaptability comes in. You mentioned adaptability as a critical issue. People do not like change. We're scared of change. Change is like an immune system. Every corporation has it. We have an immune system. So if I wanted a heart let's say a kidney transplant, the first thing the doctors will give me is immunosuppressants to take down my normal response mechanism, and then they will put the kidney in and have half a chance of success. But if they just zap a kidney into my body, it'll fail. And this is what happens with all of the consulting firms and the big organizations. Oh, we've got this funky new stuff and new AI and new AGI and stuff like that, and they just zap it into an organization. It doesn't work. 95% of AGI projects and use cases in the world today are failing. This is a new study from MIT a few weeks ago, reported in Fortune and a few other places. 95% are failing. So what the hell are we doing? It's just nonsense. We need to be able to work the human beings, the culture, the society, the acceptance, the adaptability, before you throw all this junk in there.
Well, it starts at school, doesn't it? I wonder how teachers must struggle to inculcate an attitude towards learning, the readiness to accept that I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing when I leave school. That's simply the fact. Do you think there's a little bit of the older we get, the more mortality catches up, the more we start looking to the future? Because I have never had a particularly strategic kind of approach to life. I've always kind of gone with the flow. But the older I get, the more I think, well, I want to do this and I'm looking at this, the more I start to think. Is that part of it with you, do you think?
I think it's not about age, it's about a mindset. A lot of younger people are certainly doing it. I have mentors who are older than me, but I also have mentors who are younger than me, a 10-year-old mentor and a 9-year-old mentor. They teach me how to remain innocent. They teach me how to be curious. They teach me how to ask stupid questions. I love asking stupid questions. I dare say you do too.
I've done a few.
but they teach you that. The older people teach us wisdom and context and depth and experience. And I think that combination is very much there. So our schooling system is awful across the board. They're not preparing our kids for the future. We cannot do learning at school in a linear fashion. Learning has to be around purpose. Learning has to be around ethics. Learning has to be around, vitality, flow, mindset, critical thinking, working on projects. So today's children, because knowledge is going to be ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Information is ever present. Sure. So therefore, just learning, you and I, in our generation, we used to go and look for things in books and ask Dad, and what's the capital of this country? Dad, you fought in Burma in the Second World War. What was it like? Today, we've got all that information. So therefore, we need to have a different context. So our teachers need to get us to build resilience, to build agility, to build vitality, to build courage. Those are the new attributes. So I will say that the more technological the world becomes, the more human we need to be. Because anything that can be digitized will be, because it'll be 1,000,000 times faster and 1,000,000 times cheaper. But anything and everything that cannot be digitized, love, harmony, compassion, heart, soul, spirit, critical thinking, imagination, creativity, curiosity, all of these things will be 1,000,000 times more valuable. So if we can spend 80% of our time working on those skills for the future, those to me are the future skills. The maths and physics are really, really important to get our brains sharp and understand what's going on. But these are the human skills that we need in the world of AI.
It's a very positive message. We went through an industrial revolution. We're now certainly in the technology age. But you do wonder, and I've questioned it myself a few times, are we losing what were supposed to be the soft skills, those human skills that you're recommending? Yeah. So you're saying essentially we need to relearn those?
Not relearn them, not only relearn them, but augment them, enhance them, utilize them on a day-to-day basis, bring it front and center. We all have empathy, but I asked one of the education conferences once, do you have a program in your curriculum on empathy? Duh. Do you have a program in your curriculum on trust and ethics? Yeah. Oh no, but that'll come later. No, it doesn't come later. You learn. I know it's intrinsic within us. But we need trust. To me, is the single most important thing that's going to define our future. And trust and ethics together, because an AI without trust and ethics is a weapon of mass destruction. And therefore, we need to have trust and ethics right from the beginning. Empathy, joy, love, fun, purpose. These are the things we need to learn at school. And we need to give projects to our young people where they find purpose, where they find a reason to do, where they find a reason to learn. That's how they will learn. Not just sit in a class in Victorian times and the good old way of doing it. Why does a 15-year-old has to have other 15-year-olds around them? Some people develop differently. You can have an 11-year-old and a 17-year-old with a 15-year-old, and we create projects. And then they learn from each other. That kind of osmosis is really the kind of purpose-driven projects that we need to have. Every child that I'm mentoring and supporting in many schools, they are now finding a purpose. Because we're going to live to 120 to 150. We had a session on longevity yesterday, several sessions. So if you're living to 150 and you leave school at 22, 23, whatever, you've got another 100 bloody years to do stuff. If you're not passionate about it, you don't want to be a bean counter accountant for 100 years. You don't want to be a lawyer for 100 years, and there won't be any law as we know it anyway. So what we need to do is to build around purpose, to build around things that are meaningful, genuinely meaningful. And another thing we worked on yesterday was about the conference on humanoid robots. You and I will, and our children will have a humanoid robot next to us. They'll do all the hard work. We'll have the time. But we will have time to paint and to walk and to philosophize and to think, like the good old Greek philosophers. Because information is not a problem. Work will be done by the bloody robot. and we should be able to, within the next 10 years or so, be able to focus our times on things that we love, things that we are passionate about, things that really excites us. That's why we will want to live to 120 to 150. Because my question to some of the panelists yesterday was, yeah, it's great to live to 120, but why are you living to 120? What are you going to do for the next 60 years of your life? How are you going to shape your thing? What legacy are you going to build? And they were like, well, so I said, so living longer is just an ego thing? Why are we living longer? What are we contributing back to humanity and society?
And that's the point, isn't it? It's the contribution, it is the purpose. You need to be driven by something, whatever it is. I mean, I think in the last 50 years, we've seen people moving away from this is what I do, this is my job for life, to trying lots of different things. So you can see that the seeds are there.
Yeah, indeed. And now that I've redefined myself as a futurist, and I probably didn't answer that question that well, I describe myself as a futurist, humanist, storyteller. Okay. That is my forte. Futurist because I attended every conference. I've been to every program in the world. I've researched and I've built myself. I've done my 10,000 hours of apprenticeship where I am today, 9 years later. So I have knowledge. More importantly, because I'm older, I have context, depth, experience, and hopefully some wisdom. So we need to bring that into Futurism. The difference between the young people who understand tech and stuff like that and myself is I'm able to connect the dots from a completely different perspective. So when I walk into a boardroom, not because I'm older, but I have a bit more context, I am able to connect that. So it's not just tech, it's much, much more than that. So we need knowledge. The humanist part is that I want to help in a positive way to change the world, to give back. That's what Man Make a Difference was all about. And a storyteller. One of our partners here, Professor Hendrik von Schiele, was described as the futurist of the century, and he's very techie. And so he and I have teamed up. He said, I'll do the hard, heavy lifting on the tech, and you tell the story. And we've teamed up. So my storytelling capability has become my forte in these kinds of conferences because I make it relatable. I do it in a very simple way. And somebody asked me, what's AI? I said, AI is like a tool, like a horse. You ride it. It's bigger than you, stronger than you, but you control and ride it. That's AI. It's just a tool. It's just like anything else. So these are the relatable things that hopefully I bring in and shape a story around that, as opposed to just give definitions and here's an app and here's this and it does this. I think people need to relate to it, understand it, humanize it, personalize it, and that's how we develop.
I love to hear that. I like people talking about storytelling. I figure that storytelling is such an important thing. It's such an underloved, important part of every society, every civilization. It's what we do. It's what we do with our kids when we put them to bed at night. It's what we do with each other when we're in a restaurant. It's such a key thing. We're early on day 2 of the Futurist X Summit. At the moment, the astronaut Scott Kelly is doing a Q&A session downstairs. He was nearly a year in space. There's a whole host of different people, different topics, different subjects being discussed here. Final question, Tariq. Just talk us through what you hope the summit discusses in detail and what you hope people leave the summit with.
Yeah. Brett and I, we sat on this about a year ago, and then Mohammed Al-Khatib, who's the CEO of the events company, the three of us basically were the core of this to build it up. And as we started collecting and reaching out to speakers, it was such an eclectic mix of people. So yesterday with Brian Cox, he's an astrophysicist. Today we have an astronaut and everything in between. So that was the first thing. The second thing is I insisted to bring the human aspect in. I insisted to ensure that we do not just go tech, but we go human. So we brought a lot of people in there. And there are a lot of inventors like Pablo Solman, for example. He's a great inventor, one of the best in the world today. But he's got such a big heart. And when he talks about how solar energy or nuclear fusion will save the world. And that's the spirit we need. We don't need our tech bros, the top 5 multi-trillionaires who are going to be there looking and controlling the world. We need people who are super smart with a big heart. And so the conference, what it is achieving is opening up some new windows of thinking. We are trying to be more philosophical about certain things, asking some big questions, not only answers. And this is a network, this is a series. We'll have another one this time next year, and we'll take it on from there. So really, it's all the diverging technologies, societal movements and stuff coming together, coalescing, putting something together, cooking a few things in there, and then the divergence. The divergence is interesting because ChatGPT was never planned to be ChatGPT. It's serendipity. We have that all the time. So we need to be able to look at all of these new things that are coming. Half of them are unexpected, and half of them are unplanned. So therefore, we need to be nimble, agile, adaptable, and that's what the conference is about, is to give people a framework to think, give them hope, give them some tools, give them access to some of the greatest minds in the world. And one of my taglines is, as my company is Exponential, that we like to make you future ready, future fit, and future proof. And today is about future proofing.
I always enjoy hearing from you, Tariq. Tariq Qureishy is the author of Voices of the Future. Exponential is his company, and we're at the Futurist X Summit. Tariq, lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it.